Stigmatization around mental health still exists. When it comes to parenting, they always say there is no single playbook. When your child is growing up and they start to struggle, you can often feel like you're completely alone. Talking about your child's mental health or substance use is not typically the first topic brought up when you're around your friends. Since January of 2023, I've been extending the opportunity for parents who feel comfortable talking about their journey to do so on this podcast. No topic is off limits, and not all stories are positive. This series is meant to be honest, transparent, and real for each individual parent's experience with their child. Please note that this special parent series is the parent perspective of their child's crisis. This is merely one perspective of a single story, and it's important to know that names have been changed for the protection of the parents and the children. These episodes may include details surrounding suicide, self-harm, substance abuse, including overdose, hospitalizations, psychotic episodes, and other traumatic experiences, which include parts of the treatment journey. That includes working with consultants, hiring a transport, wilderness therapy, and residential treatment experiences. All that is to say, listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Parent Series, brought to you by Success is Subjective.
It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilly.
Hi, and welcome to the show. Today, my guest is Cathy Cioth. Cathy is the co-founder of Hopestream Community, a craft-trained parent coach and mother of 2 kids who have struggled with substance misuse. She is the community director in the stream and sits on the board for Hopestream Community. I've had the pleasure of working with Cathy over the years and really appreciate the work she's doing to grow the organization and provide more access. Okay, so let's get to the interview now with Cathy on today's edition of Success is Subjective. All right, Cathy, I'm so excited to have you as a guest on the podcast. I feel like we've talked so many times over the years, but I've never actually had the opportunity to sit down and have you as a guest. So thank you for carving out time to chat with me.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me, Joanna. I'm super excited to be here. Super excited.
Well, I know a little bit of your story, and so I will, but I'm not going to lead with that other than saying that's all I know. So why don't you fill our guests in what was kind of going on with your child prior to treatment? I should also front load that you have since created something that we're going to get to. So it's not just about kind of your own child's personal experience, but it's actually the evolution of how you're now helping other parents.
Well, I'll start. Yeah. Well, so I've got 2 kids that have been on this journey with mental health and substance use challenges. So, gosh, about 8 years ago, I would say that was when everything really came to a head. And as we know, things were kind of bubbling before then. And through a lot of bad parenting choices, I felt, but at the time, really, I was just doing the best that I knew at the time. We have 2 kids. Our son at the time was 19 when pretty much all of this came to a head, and our daughter was 17. And things just got really, really rough in our home. We felt like we couldn't parent. Our kids were struggling. Our son was home from college, a failed attempt at launching. And our daughter was just struggling in high school so much. Both were actively using drugs and serious depression and anxiety. And so we made a really tough decision to have our daughter sent to a wilderness therapy program. Why I say that was so tough is I had never heard of wilderness therapy before, and it was recommended. And honestly, it was the best gift. And, I love that both of my kids actually in hindsight say it was the best gift that they got. But yeah, we had our daughter taken to wilderness therapy at 17 years old. And then 3 weeks later, we looked at each other, my husband and I, and said, well, there's still someone else that really needs help. And it was our son. And gratefully, he said yes to it, and also went to the same wilderness therapy program. They did not see each other the whole time that they were there, but they knew that each other was there. So they would write letters to each other. And From there, they graduated on the same day. Very grateful to the program for letting us allow that to happen. And then they went to respective programs after that. And, our son is just celebrated 8 years in recovery, and our daughter is currently 11 months sober. So both are doing really, really well right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty, I would say what I hear more commonly is if parents have one child go to treatment, oftentimes it's after the graduation where the sibling then advocates to the parents, I want that experience that they have. At least I feel like I've heard that story multiple times. I've never, and I'm sure you're not the only one, but you are the first person that I'm meeting that has had both children in the same program, but like you said, two different groups, because we're talking about different genders, different ages, different therapists, but in the same program at the same time. So my question about what was your experience as a parent dealing with wilderness is two-pronged, because now you're getting the same information, but you're kind of filtering it. How does this relay to my daughter? How does this relay to my son? So how was that experience for you?
It was a great experience for us. Definitely a lot of grief. I will say that, because it's just, the expectations of life, right? You're thinking your kids are going to graduate, and you kind of raise them thinking of this experience of proms and graduation, going to college and all of that. So there was definitely, I would say, in the very beginning of the whole process, a lot of grief for both children, right? One, knowing that my daughter was not going to have the same experiences that my son had in his end of high school years, for example, right? So that was just really interesting. But I will, again, a lot of gratitude to the Wilderness program, because they basically were helping us during this whole process and saying, you're going to learn so much on how to communicate and, really how to approach family healing in a very unique way, because your kids are at the same program. So they really espoused the Arbinger method. We read Anatomy of Peace and Leadership and Self-Deception. And I would say that was our first segue into healing for our family, looking at, all of our problems with such compassion and where the root of emotions come from. And that was honestly, such a really life-changing books for us, and just the whole protocol. And our letter writing between our kids was very different, right? We were basically communicating with a young adult and an adolescent. So our adolescent was not really bought into the program as quickly as our young adult was, And so there was a lot of, how do we respond to this letter, and what do we do? And it was great, but so much learning happened. I just feel like it was a lot of learning and intense. It was like an intensive program for parents, for kids, the whole family network.
Oh, big time. I mean, I'm saying you're the first unicorn that I've met that's had both children in the same program at the same time. Like, oh my gosh, I am just really trying to just better understand how that experience could be for you. So that's kind of wildly fascinating. Okay. So I am going to ask a question let me just ask it now. I'm going to ask this question because you kind of alluded to it, when you were talking about the grief and loss of kind of the vision or the milestones that your child will be having at the time. I tend to ask parents that question of knowing that your child has been through treatment at some point or the treatment continuum, how has your definition or view of success for them changed? And again, knowing you just shared both of your children are doing well in their respective recovery journeys. So how would you define success? And I asked this question too, and obviously you're going to answer it differently for each child.
Yes and no. I mean, honestly, my definition of success is so different now. I mean, really, it's funny as I say this to you. I feel like, wow, I almost feel like I was so materialistic back then, right? I mean, that 4-year paper of a college degree, mattered so much, and, going to prom and having the pictures and having the narrative of what I thought success was about back then. It has changed so much. I would not give up an ounce of this journey. And I know I've talked to you about this before. And this didn't come overnight, as you know. Parents going through this, they do a lot of, processing and everything. And I've done a lot of my own recovery work here too. I have just intense gratitude for where my kids are right now. And even when things didn't seem like they were, quote, successful, they really were, because our kids were learning invaluable tools. And so even though the road seemed really rocky at the time, and I thought, oh my gosh, my husband and I would have to say, really learned to look at, what is this teaching us? So we were learning all the time. So, it really is, we just chose to take a different perspective on the whole journey of all of this. And so, yes, definitely my definition of success has changed, but in a great way. And I, it's kind of cool because both of my kids have said that they would not give up anything that they went through either, even though it was really hard. I mean, let's face it, they were the identified patient, right? They were the ones, at such a young age going through such a difficult journey. They would not give up all that they've learned. And, being two young adults in recovery has been great. That's just been a great gift for both of them and for our family.
Wow. Okay. So you proved me wrong. Your definition of success does not differentiate based on the child, but I appreciate you actually reflecting on what specifically was, pre 8 years ago, pre-experience, kind of looking at the treatment process for your children or making that decision. You identified specifically the things that felt like they mattered. And now in hindsight, you're able to look back and say, like, that's actually not what's important. What's important is shifted drastically. And it's great to hear too that your children are able to reflect on their experiences too, although their experiences, right, the willingness and whatnot was different. They're able to identify that they learned a lot and they wouldn't change those experiences for themselves.
That's right.
So I'm getting to a question. I want to know what you're doing. And this was me kind of like, I hinted at it earlier, like, okay, yes, you had your personal experiences, but you also did something that provided space for more parents. So tell us about what ended up coming out of your experience.
Ooh, that's loaded. I mean, really, I have to really almost give a shout out to what I did in the very beginning, because yes, eventually I met someone that was amazing, Brenda Zane, who was on your podcast before. She's phenomenal. She and I become great friends and created an incredible nonprofit called Hopestream Community. Before that, I realized very early the importance of service and giving back and how important that was for my own recovery. I started getting on the wilderness therapy parent support calls. And, it was for me originally, right? Just to, okay, what are the kids like in wilderness, all these things. And I really liked the calls. And then my kids went on to their, respective programs, and there was no parent support call at all. And so I was missing it. So I hopped back on the wilderness therapy support call. And I started giving back because people said, oh, you're an alumni parent. What was this like? And so realizing that I was healing by giving back, I thought there's something to this. There really is something to this. And so anyway, let's fast forward several years. One of my friends that I met in that wilderness therapy support call and, the groups that we created over there introduced me to Brenda's online community. And things were going pretty well in my life. So I thought, oh yeah, this is really great. This is a great positive community. And then life kind of has a little bump in the road. And I realized, wow, I really need this community. And I really need education around it too. I needed the workshops, so I became a certified craft. Well, I became trained in craft, community reinforcement and family training. And then Brenda and I started hitting it off, and we thought, wow, we could really make this community so robust. And so we partnered together. And doing all of this has just really helped. I mean, this has been my recovery work, seeing the importance of self-care, and not to knock all the other great support systems out there. I did do Al-Anon for a little bit. I worked the 12 steps. That was phenomenal. It's just, I couldn't find a meeting that worked for me. And so I've had the unique perspective of saying, well, what does work for me? And Brenda was doing the same philosophical searching in her own life, right? And that's how we came up, with Hopestream Community and really making it a robust community and offering for parents.
Well, and the evolution of it all now is that it started off for just moms, right? It was just not even like parents. It was just a supportive community for moms. Then it's expanded to a separate community for just dads. And then you evolved even more to creating it into a 501c3 status, so
That's
nonprofit.
Right. Yeah.
Which is making it more accessible for more parents across the world.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up because, it didn't feel right to make money off of this, right? It was just, how do we do this? This information is invaluable and all parents need access to this. So creating a nonprofit really was just a no-brainer in both of our minds, is how can we do this? How can we offer it? We don't turn anyone away. We offer partial scholarships, and what I've known too is that, by the way, so many of our moms are giving back too, and our dads, right? They join and they're like, and we'll say, yeah, we're this nonprofit. And they're like, oh, I want a scholarship, parents, for this. So it's just been a really beautiful resource of giving back. So yeah, we love it. And as you said, it's global. I mean, it was so exciting to get our first members from, Europe and, lots of members in Canada even. And it's just been so exciting. And having a space for dads has been really important too, even though dads do their process a lot differently than their moms, And so,
totally.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I love the work that you do. I mean, I have had more parents over the years than I can count that have been connected to the Hopestream community and even pre-nonprofit status. And so, again, just knowing that you're making yourself more accessible to more families always makes me the happiest. Because if I ever get hired by somebody that doesn't have a connection to some sort of parent support, I always say what the program offers is like very minimal, and what you really need long term is kind of that thread throughout. So I almost view like a parent community, like a supportive community, as the parallel process to having a consultant. You need parents and you need that community long after your child has been in and out of these programs, because the programs are temporary.
Yes.
It's but the parents need that support. And same for a consultant. Again, like my job is to literally help you get connected to those programs and then phase out. But who's there long after for the parents and also for the kid? But that's another conversation for another day.
Well, thanks, Joanna. I agree. We had an amazing educational consultant help us with all of that. But you're right. I mean, when, my son came home and my daughter came home, I wasn't going to be texting and calling her and say, hey, I'm not really sure what to do here, right? And so it is really nice to have that. And, educational consultants are just so vital to the whole process. But agree, having a parent community is just like our kids have their support community, right? Our parents need one as well. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there is any advice that you could give to a parent right now that's going through this, other than obviously the shameless plug that we both just made, not so shameless, but it is shameless, about being connected to a parent community, is there anything that you would impart to a parent right now that might be listening to this, kind of curious, we need to make this decision, we don't know what to do? As a parent that's been through it with 2 children, what advice would you give that parent right now?
Oh, breathe. The first thing I would tell them is just to do some deep breathing, and because this is so tough, not to lose hope. Gather as many resources as you can in your camp. Don't be afraid. Tell yourself, you're doing the best that you can with the information that you have right now. I talk to a lot of parents, and, it's so easy to beat yourself up over yelling and screaming and all the things that we all did with our kids and our families. And we just felt so hopeless and helpless. So I would really, yes, there is a shameless plug of finding your community, finding a consultant to help you. But honestly, I would just say, try to get grounded. If you have a partner in the picture, sit down together and, with pen and paper and write down, okay, let's see, what are our options here, right? Because honestly, let's be clear, like not every option is only to go away to a program. There are so many more options that are available today than there were 8 years ago. And I will say, I think that's just amazing, right? That you can keep your kid at home and maybe surround them with a great PHP, IOP resource, or, or maybe you're catching it a little earlier. I know for us, I think one piece of advice I would give too is if you have a little inkling that something is not quite right, really explore that further. I know for us, we waited and things were just dire by the time it got, I just didn't want to face that. And I wish I had the courage to kind of look at things a little more. So definitely work with your partner, work with family, your loved one, whatever that is. And don't lose hope. There's so much out there.
Well, Cathy, thank you again, not just for being a guest on the podcast and sharing your story from the parent perspective, but for also partnering with Brenda to create what is the Hopestream community, communities. So thank you again for the work that you're doing in giving back and continuing to heal for yourself as your children are still in their respective recovery experiences.
Thanks, Joanna. It's been great having this conversation with you. I just love it. And looking forward to seeing you in person again real soon.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guests for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email Joanna at lilyconsulting.com. Be sure to check out the lilyconsulting.com website for additional resources outside of podcasting. Now, if you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps, such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Thanks again for listening in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.
Do you have a teenager or young adult who seems to have lost their way? Maybe they need help navigating adolescence, adulthood, and decisions surrounding higher education. Or maybe they have become withdrawn, their grades are slipping, or they are flat out living a reckless lifestyle, and you're concerned about their health and well-being. If this describes what your teen or young adult is facing, a therapeutic consultant may be able to help. Mental health, addiction recovery, and higher education can all be equally expensive. Well, information is everywhere. How do you know what option is the best one for your family? Some parents have the time to research and navigate this on their own. Some don't. If the latter applies to you, enter therapeutic consultants. Therapeutic consultants, like Joanna, listen to your family's specific needs and advocate on behalf of your loved one. TCs will research therapeutic resources, recommend treatment programs, and assist during adulthood transitions. Not being affiliated with any program, their support is completely objective and catered toward the best interest of each unique family. To find a qualified therapeutic consultant to work with, check out TCA, also known as the Therapeutic Consulting Association. Their website is therapeuticconsulting.org, all one word. Again, that's therapeuticconsulting.org. Then click the Find a Pro tab up at the top.